Don't look under the bed, a creepy encounter in the dark. I remember the night vividly, every sound, every chill, every second that stretched into eternity. It was October 30th, the night before Halloween. The wind outside screamed through the cracks in the old window frame of my room, making the curtains flutter like pale ghosts. The house I lived in wasn't new. It was my grandparents' old place, a creaky wooden two-story home that smelled faintly of dust, candle wax, and something else. Something that always lingered in the corners of the basement and under the stairs. I had just moved back in after years of living away, and this was my first week sleeping in my childhood bedroom again. Everything looked smaller, the crooked bookshelf, the squeaky desk chair, even the bed. That old bed, the one I used to hide under during thunderstorms when I was a kid. But now, lying there as an adult, it didn't feel safe anymore. It felt wrong. I was scrolling through my phone when I first heard it, a slow scraping sound like nails dragging across wood. I froze and turned the volume down. The sound came again. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. I sat up, listening. My heart began to thud in my chest. It wasn't coming from the walls or the ceiling. It was coming from under the bed. For a few moments I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a mouse. Maybe the house was just settling. I laughed nervously at myself and turned off the light. But then, right as I closed my eyes, the scratching changed. It wasn't random anymore. It was rhythmic. 3 scratches, then a pause, then 2, as if something was trying to form a pattern, trying to get my attention. My breathing grew uneven. The blanket suddenly felt too thin, too fragile to protect me. I wanted to look, to just peek under the bed and prove it was nothing. But something deep in my gut whispered, "Don't." That whisper in my mind felt louder than the wind, heavier than the silence that followed the scratching. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The bright beam cut through the darkness. I hesitated, holding my breath. Then, slowly, I leaned over the side of the bed and pointed the light toward the floor. At first, I saw nothing but the wooden boards, scattered dust, and an old shoe. Relief began to settle in until I noticed it. A hand, pale grey, with skin so thin that the veins beneath it bulged like black ropes. Its nails were long, sharp, cracked, dragging lightly against the floorboards. It was reaching out. The light shook in my trembling hand. I wanted to scream, but terror locked my throat. I blinked once, twice, and it was gone. The space beneath the bed was empty again. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I pulled back up, grabbed my pillow, and pressed it against my face to muffle the sound of my breathing. That's when I heard the whisper, a soft, broken voice right beneath me. "Don't look under the bed." I froze completely. The voice was too close, too real. Every hair on my body stood on end. I could feel the cold radiating from beneath me, seeping through the mattress. I slowly swung my legs off the bed, trying to make as little noise as possible. The wooden floor groaned softly under my weight. I reached for the door handle, my hand shaking violently. Then, something grabbed my ankle. It was fast, cold, and impossibly strong. I screamed as I fell forward, hitting the floor hard. My fingernails dug into the wood, desperate to hold on, but it pulled me back with unnatural strength. I kicked, screamed, begged, but the thing's grip only tightened. The voice came again, hissing this time. "You looked." I glanced back, and what I saw, I wish I could erase from my mind. A face was emerging from the darkness beneath the bed, pale and elongated, eyes hollow and glowing faintly yellow. Its mouth was wide, impossibly wide, splitting its face into a gaping grin filled with jagged, uneven teeth. Black liquid dripped from its lips as it whispered, "Now you can't leave." I screamed so loud it hurt my throat. I slammed my free leg against the edge of the bed frame again and again until, finally, its grip loosened. I scrambled to my feet and bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I didn't stop running until I reached the living room, where I collapsed on the floor, trembling violently. I stayed there all night, watching the shadows creep across the walls. When morning finally came, I forced myself to go back upstairs. The door to my room was open, the bed was perfectly in place, but the floorboards beneath it were ruined, deep claw-like scratches gouged into the wood. I wanted to believe I'd dreamed it all, that it was a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. That night, I slept in the guest room. I locked the door, stuffed towels under the crack, and left the lights on. But sometime after midnight, I woke up again. There was a noise, faint but unmistakable. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. My blood turned to ice. The sound wasn't coming from my old room. It was coming from beneath the guest bed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then, that same voice, soft, broken, mocking, whispered again, "Don't look under the bed." I left the house the next morning and never went back. But now, even in my apartment, hundreds of miles away, I sometimes hear it when I lie awake at night. That same slow, deliberate scratching beneath the bed. And I know deep down that whatever I saw that night didn't stay behind. It followed me, waiting for the moment I'm foolish enough to look again. Fear is a warning, not a weakness. When something deep inside you whispers, "Don't look," listen to it. Some things in the dark are not meant to be seen, and curiosity can awaken horrors that never stop watching once you do. When I was a child, my mother had one rule she never failed to remind me of. Never, ever look under the bed after midnight. She said it softly every night when she tucked me in, with that distant, worried look in her eyes. "If you ever hear something," she'd whisper, "don't move, don't speak, and whatever you do, don't look." As a kid, I thought it was just one of her strange bedtime superstitions, like how she covered mirrors before sleeping or left salt in the corners of the room to keep the shadows out. I would giggle, nod, and promise her I wouldn't. But children forget promises, and adults stop believing in their childhood fears. I should have listened. I really should have. Years later, when my mother passed away, I moved back into that old family home. It had been sitting empty for nearly a decade, its wooden floors sagging with age, its walls still carrying the faint scent of her lavender perfume. I thought it would bring me comfort, maybe some closure, to sleep in my old room again. But from the first night, I could tell something about the house had changed. The air inside felt too heavy, like it was holding its breath. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was thick, pressing against my ears. Even the light from the street lamps outside didn't reach through the windows. It was as if the darkness inside refused to let it in. For the first few nights, I told myself it was just the uneasiness of being back in a place so full of memories. The bed creaked, the pipes groaned, and the old oak tree outside scratched its branches against the window. Normal, I told myself. Completely normal. But on the fifth night, just after 3 in the morning, I woke up suddenly. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, deliberate, and rhythmic. I held my breath. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from beneath the bed. My heart started pounding. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, trying to convince myself it was a mouse or the house shifting. But then the tapping stopped, and something else began. Breathing. Slow, uneven, wet breathing. The kind that didn't sound like lungs at all, more like something dragging air through rotten flesh. I could feel it vibrating through the mattress, right below me. I clenched my teeth, praying I was dreaming, praying it would stop. And then, I heard a voice, low, hoarse, and broken. "Why aren't you asleep?" Every inch of my body went cold. The sound came from directly under me. I could feel it, too close to be real. My entire body froze, as though the slightest movement would draw its attention. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, but fear rooted me in place. Then the voice came again, this time slower, deliberate, whispering each word like it enjoyed saying them. "You promised not to look." The breath hit the underside of the mattress, making the bed shudder slightly. I started to cry silently, tears streaming down my face as I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. That's when I remembered my mother's voice in my head, whispering that same phrase, "Don't look under the bed after midnight." At the time, I thought it was an old wives' tale. Now, her warning echoed like a curse. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I don't know. I reached out slowly toward my nightstand where my phone was charging. My fingers brushed the cord, but it slipped away. I moved again, too fast this time, and the floor creaked under my bed. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was unbearable, stretching out like a held breath from something that was listening. Then came the sound of nails, long, sharp nails, scraping up the wooden slats of the bed frame. The vibration ran through the mattress, right into my bones. I couldn't take it anymore. My trembling fingers finally found the phone, and I turned on the flashlight. I held the light toward the floor, hesitating for only a second. And then, against every instinct I had, I leaned over the side of the bed. The beam of light found movement. Hair, long, tangled black strands that swayed as if they were underwater. Beneath the hair was a shape, pale, twisted, crouched beneath my bed. My breath caught in my throat. It turned its head slowly, impossibly slowly, until its face came into view. Its eyes were empty sockets, black and glistening, and its mouth, oh God, that mouth, stretched far too wide, splitting across its cheeks into a grin that dripped something thick and dark. The creature tilted its head at me, and in a voice that gurgled like it was speaking through water, it said, "You shouldn't have looked." I screamed and jerked backward, dropping the phone. The flashlight rolled across the floor, the beam spinning wildly. In that flickering light, I saw its arm shoot out from under the bed, a thin, bone-like limb with clawed fingers. It wrapped around my wrist, its skin icy and slick, and yanked. The strength was unnatural. I hit the floor, kicking, clawing, sobbing, trying to pull away. The nails dug deep into my flesh, drawing blood. I screamed again, thrashing violently until I managed to grab the nightstand and pull myself free. The phone's beam hit the creature's face again just as it hissed and crawled backward under the bed with terrifying speed, limbs twisting in impossible ways. I ran. I didn't stop to look back. I slammed the bedroom door shut, bolted down the stairs, and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When morning came, I forced myself to go back upstairs, telling myself it couldn't have been real. But when I opened the door, the air inside felt wrong, colder, heavier. I knelt and looked at the floorboards near the bed. There were long, deep scratches carved into the wood, leading from the edge of the bed toward the wall. My wrist throbbed, and when I rolled up my sleeve, I saw faint, purplish marks around it, the shape of fingers. That night, I didn't sleep in that room. I stayed in the guest room downstairs, but around 3 a.m., I woke again. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. It was coming from beneath that bed now. My breath hitched, and before I could move, a whisper floated through the darkness, faint, yet unmistakable. "You looked once. You'll look again. I never looked. I never will. But no matter where I go, no matter where I sleep, the sound follows. Every night at the same time, that tapping begins. Sometimes beneath the bed, sometimes from the walls, sometimes from the floor just beneath my feet. The warning was never about that house. It was about something else entirely, something that waits for the curious to see it. Once you do, you belong to it. And I can feel it, even now under me, waiting for the moment my curiosity wins again. There are rules in the darkness, ancient and unbreakable. Curiosity may open doors, But some doors lead to places that never close. When the night whispers, "Don't look," listen, because some things in the dark aren't waiting to be found. They're waiting to find you.